Chapter 8. When he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him. And behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded, for a proof to them. When he had entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him. Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, Go, and he goes, and to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, Truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west, and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And to the centurion Jesus said, Go, let it be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. And when Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. That evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word, and healed all who were sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Another of the disciples said to him, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, Follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead. And when he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves. But he was asleep. And they went and woke him, saying, Save us, Lord, we are perishing. And he said to them, Why are you afraid, O you of little faith? Then he rose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. And the men marveled, saying, What sort of man is this, that even winds and sea obey him? And when he came to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men met him, coming out of the tombs, so fierce that no one could pass that way. And behold, they cried out, What have you to do with us, O Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time? Now a herd of many pigs was feeding at some distance from them. And the demons begged him, saying, If you cast us out, send us away into the herd of pigs. And he said to them, Go. So they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. The herdsmen fled, and going into the city they told everything, especially what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, all the city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. Chapter 9.
Matthew 8. After these 3 chapters filled with his teachings, Matthew gives us 2 chapters occupied with his works of power. It was not enough for him to enunciate the principles of the kingdom, he displayed the power of the kingdom in a variety of striking ways. There are 5 main illustrations of that power in Matt 8 and again in Matt 9. In each case we may say that the miracle the Lord performed in connection with human bodies, or with visible and tangible things, was a proof of how he could deal with the deeper-seated things of the soul. The first case is that of the leper, a picture of sin in its defiling, corrupting power. The poor man was convinced of the power of Jesus, but not fully persuaded of his grace. Yet the Lord instantly delivered him by his touch and his word of power. Only 5 words, "I will, be thou clean," and the thing was done, a witness to the priests if the man did as he was told that the power of God was present amongst them. The second case was that of the Gentile centurion and his servant, a case illustrating the impotence which is induced by sin. Here again is emphasized the power of his word. The centurion himself emphasized it, for he knew the power of an authoritative word as exemplified in the Roman military system. The rank of a centurion was not a high one, yet those under him at once obeyed his instructions, and his faith discovered in Jesus one whose word could accomplish the miraculous. The Lord acknowledged his faith as great, and beyond anything he had found in Israel. He spoke the needed word and the servant was healed. He also prophesied that many a Gentile from a distance would enter the kingdom with the fathers of Israel, while those who had considered it theirs by prescriptive right would be cast into outer darkness. The third case is that of Peter's mother-in-law. Here his touch instantly cured her. There is no record of his having spoken a word. It might be his touch and his word, as with the leper, or his word only, as with the centurion's servant, or his touch only. The result in each case was the same instantaneous deliverance. There was no convalescence from the results of the fever. She at once arose and served others. Sin induces a fevered state of mind and soul, but his touch dispels it. In verses 16 and 17 we have first, a summary of his many works of power and mercy at eventide, and second, the quotation from Isaiah 53, which reveals to us the way and spirit in which he did these things. The words quoted have been used erroneously by some as though they meant that on the cross he bore our sicknesses, and thus the believer never ought to be ill. The right application is found here. He did not relieve men without feeling their sorrows and sicknesses. He bore in his spirit the weight of the very evils that he dismissed by his power. The incidents recorded in verses 18 to 22 show us that not only our deliverance, but our discipleship also must be at the call of his authoritative word. A certain scribe volunteered to follow without having received his call. The Lord at once showed him what would be involved in following such a one as himself, for he was the homeless Son of Man. But conversely, his call is sufficient. It was one who was already a disciple who wished to put an earthly duty in the first place. The call and claim of the Master must be absolutely supreme. He had disciples who owned his claim and followed him, as verse 23 shows, and they gave him a place to lay his head in their ship. Yet, even so, following him led them into trouble. This brings us to the fourth of these striking cases, the storm on the lake, typical of how the power of the devil lashes into fury the unrestful sea of humanity. It was all nothing to him and he peacefully slept. But at the cry of the disciples he arose and asserted his command of these mighty forces of nature. As a man commands his hound, and the obedient dog lies down at his feet, so did wind and sea lie down at the word of their Maker. Arrived at the other side, he was confronted by 2 men who were dominated by demonic servants of the devil. One of these was a special stronghold held by a whole legion of demons, as Mark and Luke show us, though evidently there were 2, and thus a sufficient witness was borne to his power over the enemy. The demons knew him, and also knew that they had no power to resist his word. Hence they asked permission to enter the herd of unclean swine, that would never have been there had Israel been walking according to the law. As far as the record goes, Jesus spoke but one word, "Go." In result the men were delivered and the swine destroyed. Thus far we have considered the power of the Lord. Before leaving the chapter let us notice the response on the side of men. There is a striking contrast between the great faith of the centurion and the little faith of the disciples in the storm. Great faith was marked by 2 things seen in verse 8. He said, "I am not worthy," condemning himself, and thus ruling himself out of the question. He also said, "Speak the word only," in addressing the Lord. He had no opinion of himself, but he had a great opinion of him, so great that he was prepared to accredit his word without any support from without. Some folk want to have the word of the Lord supported by feelings, or by reason, or by experience, but great faith is produced by discovering in Jesus so great a person that his naked word is enough. With the disciples it was just the opposite. They were thinking altogether of themselves. It was, "Save us, we perish." When Jesus calmed the storm, they were astounded, saying, "What manner of man is this?" Yes, what manner indeed. Had they really known him, they would have been surprised if he had not asserted his power. The fact was, they had big thoughts of themselves and but little thoughts of him, and this is little faith. So they marveled as he acted, whereas in the case of the centurion Jesus marveled at his faith. In spite of their little faith, however, they loved and followed him. At the beginning of the chapter we see defective faith on the part of the leper. He clearly saw the power of Jesus, yet hardly apprehended his willingness. At the end of the chapter we see men with no faith at all. It did not weigh with them that demons had been dispossessed, for a spiritual deliverance meant little to them. What mattered to them was the loss of their pigs. Jesus they did not understand, but pigs they did understand. Apt figure of men of the world who have an eye for any material gain, but no heart for Christ. They evidently got nothing, but all the others did. Do not miss the delightful fact that defective faith and little faith got the blessing just as really and fully as great faith. The blessing is not according to the quality or quantity of faith, but according to his heart of grace.